Welcome to the Garage Door Heroes podcast. I am your host, Robb Leishman, founder of Legit 5 Garage Door Marketing, and this is the place where garage door dealers become true heroes in their markets and businesses. In each episode, I bring you proven strategies, insider stories, and conversations with industry leaders to help you grow your company, lead your team with confidence, and create the freedom you've been looking for. Because in this business, it's not just about fixing doors, it's about building lives, families, and legacies. Let's get started. Right on. Hey, Garage Door Heroes. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. This is an exciting day. Somebody that I have admired from afar for a few years now that has been inspirational in the garage door industry. Is a very special guest today, Matt Kuehlhorn. And he is amazing. I think everybody probably knows who he is. And he's got an amazing story. He's got an amazing journey. And I'm just going to talk briefly, guys, about I was at a vertical track. I'm going to say 3 years ago, maybe more, maybe less, but I was just kind of going, I'm going to take my focus and my attention to what I do to the garage door industry. And I had at the time several friends in the industry encouraging me to kind of focus here. I did have a bunch of garage door clients previously, but I was being encouraged to sort of double down, really focus my efforts and dial it in for the garage door industry. And I love it. And I was at this vertical track down in Phoenix. It's the Tommy Mello's A1 Garage Door Freedom puts on this expo. And I was just watching people for the first time. And Tommy introduced Matt, and Matt got up on stage, and Matt's from sort of the neighboring state to me. And we're kind of ski towns, Rocky Mountain, Mountain West kind of lifestyle. And I paid close attention. And I think Matt's journey, Matt's story is inspirational, and where he's come from and what he's developed with Cooler Garage Doors and Cooler Lifestyle Podcast,
That's right.
Which goes beyond garage doors, which is so awesome. And again, I don't want to step on Matt's toes and try and tell his story. I don't know it better than he does, and I'm going to give him some bandwidth. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Rob, I appreciate it, man. I really do. And if my story can help inspire or move anybody, I'm all in, man. So yeah, you caught me at that vertical track. I had reached out to Tommy prior. I can't remember if that was the first or second vertical track. But I was like, Tommy, give me 10 minutes. I'll get you a standing ovation. He was like, okay, deal. I was like, right on. I've always wanted to be on stages. And anytime I get to a conference, man, in 2011 and 12, I went literally bankrupt going to different conferences. And that's a story for another time. But I was always intent on getting on stages. So just funny.
Right on.
It brings us full circle. Here we are.
That's right. And here we are. And I've thought about this day since that day. If I can be honest, I have thought, there are so many amazing characters in the garage door industry theater, if you will. And I am this is sort of one of those milestones. So thanks again for joining us. And
I mean, thank you. It's humbling to even hear about that. And, you're asking about my story. I'll give you kind of the cliff notes, and then we can dive all over. I mean, we can go anywhere we want to. I'm an open book, and I just really appreciate authenticity. And, I don't even see myself as having made it or made much of anything yet. And I've got some big aspirations over the next 3 years, but this all started literally about to go bankrupt again. So I referenced like 2011, 2012 is like February of 2012 is really when I went bankrupt. I filed Chapter 7. And then, 2015, a few years later, I had gotten the job that my mom wanted. Like I was a government employee. I had the benefits. I had little babies at home. And I tend to be an achiever. I tend to like get my letter in high school and then I'm done running or get my letter, I would achieve things. And so at any rate, I had this county job and I made some achievements. Like I learned how to write grants and I brought in a certain dollar amount for this organization. I was working in drug prevention. And after I had these achievements, I was like, I got to go. Like I'm done. Like I'm not going to stay in government work and just pure recipe for mediocrity from my perspective. And so
Right.
I left and I didn't really have a plan. And I started an entity that never funded anything and didn't have a revenue driver. And, you know, at the end of the day, I was backed into another corner. I had a good friend of mine offer me $20 to come paint out his walls of a spec house. So I'm painting. I didn't really grow up in the trades. I was learning, and I heard from an old landlord that she needed to get her house painted, but was having a problem getting somebody to call her back. And I was like, oh, I could call her back. And that's literally where Cooler started. So I cut a deal, no money down, not a dime. I ended up painting a house for the first. I mean, Cooler was Cooler Painting LLC. I got a $5 logo off of Fiverr. Like Dan Antonelli would just cringe on it.
He'll be calling us both on this one.
But it started, and I hired a guy for $25 an hour, and paid him for a day to literally watch him use my new paint sprayer so that I could get up on this house the next day, spray out these walls, like just grinding, figuring it out. That winter, I had my first garage door project. It took me like 3-4 months to talk the rep into giving me a garage door shot.
Right.
I mean, that was early days, man, but we grew fast and kind of bring us here in a long story short.
It is crazy. When I had my home service business, which was air duct cleaning, and that started about 2008. That was a really joyous time to just try and to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I remember getting my first job and having my machinery, and then having to hire an expert to come and show me how to use my machine. I actually did that. I know that I'll just say I know that pain.
Yeah, no, it's a true story. I mean, I already had a T-shirt, so we wore the Cooler logo up on the ladder. I took photos. That's how I got my next job, was posting in Facebook.
Well, and it's a grind, and it's such a grind to get your first one, but getting your first one makes getting your second job easier, right? And the third time, the third job we get, all of a sudden we're like, well, hey, we can do this. We can do this. And then we get a little motivation and confidence. And that's cool. So, so what year was that sort of Cooler Garage Doors became what you do? That became your existence, your focus. You got this really awesome logo. I imagine that's a Dan Antonelli brand.
It is. Yeah. This all happened basically in 2022. So I think Tommy's first vertical track was 2021. I don't know if that's where we saw, or if it was the one after that. But when I first went to the first one, I was like, oh, I get it. I see kind of the disruption. Like there's new school, old school in the industry. There's real disruption in the industry. And what a cool time to be in it and have this vehicle. Like what a blessing. And when I saw this kind of new school, I was like, oh, I got it. So, I mean, I had, for better, for worse, capital at the moment. It was debt, but I hired Dan Antonelli. I hired Al Levy. I hired all the players that I saw at that first vertical track. I was just like, let's go. And so that's really when it shifted. The kind of the problem was that I was in an absolutely tiny market. And when I say tiny, it doesn't even do it justice, but I was up in Gunnison Crest Butte. So we had 18,000 people in the county, just barricaded by other mountains. Is a little bit of an island, if you will. Really hard to scale home services, really hard to do business in general. And back then I was all in on builders. Like that was 80-90% of my business was the new builds. And so it took me years to unravel, get into a different market where the home service model can prevail. And it just kicks butt.
Of course. And that's what I try and talk. All my guys, everybody can get excited about different aspects. If we divide the industry into, some segments, there's residential service and repair, and there's commercial, and then there's new construction, new residential construction, and there's some industrial and ag and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it didn't take me too long hanging out with the A1 crowd and just kind of that mindset, the garage door freedom crowd, to realize home service, residential service and repair is that core, should be that core focus, and where the profitability is in the repeat business. And we can save people's, I shouldn't say save people's lives, but if just imagine with me, Mrs. Jones might be a single mom, 2 or 3 kids. She's got to get kids to work or get kids to school. She's got to get to work, and she hits the opener, and that's the morning that the spring decides to break, and she can't get in or out.
Yeah.
And when she gets the right person that says, I can get there right now and save the day, we become so, we become heroes. We become, great and amazing to them. And I think that's what's really cool about what we do, about the garage door industry.
Well, full on, as I get to practice, level up my skill set of marketing, I mean, it's very apparent. I mean, it's not about the door at all. Yeah. It's about everything that happens behind that door. And that's a story that we just constantly tell. We talk about it as a team. I tell it in the marketing. I mean, it's about keeping life moving. Let's help make it a little easier.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, so you got your brand, and now you're all in, and you have an amazing brand, and I love it. I love the creative that went on there from the start, or kick charge. So, how you're not in the most densely populated market where you're at. It's not a big city. We don't have millions and millions of homes in that market, and you had to crack in. And I know you had to kind of maybe be a little unconventional, perhaps, to get some jobs. And if there's a secret sauce that you don't really want to share, I get it. But if there's something that you could, maybe share, what took you from, okay, now it's 2021, 2022. I've got a brand, I've got skills, I know what I'm doing, and I need to dominate my market. What sort of steps did you take?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, there's one super clear one. This started from day one. And I think for listeners, this is really important. Like you already mentioned the niches in the niche, like in garage door land, you could focus on builders, you could focus on homeowners, you can go commercial, you could do niches, right? And I think all of that is going to be focused depending on how you answer the question of what do you want? Are you building a business for lifestyle? Are you building a business to sell? When I started Kuehlhorn back in 2015, I was like, I'm going to build a company I can sell. Like that just sounded cool. And I don't really know what that meant. I was after $1 million company at that point, and it took me less than 3 years to get there. And I was like, what the heck is this? This is not at all what I expected. So now I'm in like 10 years into the run when we moved into this new market. And you're right, this is like a couple 100K style population market. It's the main hub between Salt Lake and Denver. So that's cool. And it's still a small town in the West. Probably like most small towns, like it's a bit of network. It's who you know. We came in and there were 3 players. They've all had decades of building. Like talk about local, there's a joke in the Western towns. Like if you haven't been at some place for 20 years, you're not a local. Wow. And so we come in as the new kids, right? And because the brand's so powerful, like one truck's rolling around, people see us everywhere. And ultimately, it's almost too good because I have to fight the idea that we would ever be a franchise, right? And for local Western, be like, oh, you guys franchise? You're not from around here. It's like, well, actually, yeah, we're pretty nitty gritty around here, locally owned, and that just has to be part of the story because of how tight we look and run. But to direct your question, like if you're greenfielding or if you're just looking to expand, I mean, there's really no secret sauce. When I was up at when I was in drug prevention is all about marketing and messaging. This is how you craft an environment that changes people's norms, changes how they believe. And so once I understood Grand Junction and how to communicate in different channels, I was all in. And for Grand Junction, it's TV. TV is a massive play. It's also a massive bill. Like, it's not inexpensive. And so there is risk. And I've just always been a risk taker, for better, for worse. And it's knowing oneself, understanding the personalities, and knowing how people get information and getting it into those channels. Like in my first market, it was one specific newspaper, and I would just mark it in the top page, and it was on every newsstand often. And then here it's really TV. I can't wait to get into radio. Like, some of my methodologies around marketing have definitely taken some new lessons over the years, but
Right.
yeah, there's truly no secret sauce, just a gobs amount of effort and a true decision on where you're going, what you're doing, what are you going to craft.
Man. All right, we're going to go there. We're going to go with that. That is a segue into something I would love to talk about.
Let's go.
So, because you are in a market that's unlike these big cities where Google and Google search kind of plays a big role, and we're in Grand Junction. Now, you mentioned Grand Junction sort of is this hub between Denver and Salt Lake, and I'm in the south end of Salt Lake Valley. And I grew up here. I did live for a time in North Texas, but I understand that there are some mindsets that come with being in the West, being in ski mountain kind of ideas. And so you have to be able to approach that. You have to get to these people on their level. And so our message has to be something that appeals to them for trust. Right. And I think that's when you tell that story, it is all about how do we gain trust, especially when we're new in a smaller area. Yeah. And, when you can actually get on TV and kind of they can see and hear you and just about feel your personality through the screen, just about everything except smell you. They experience you. And that's where we connect. Yes. Very cool. Very cool. It's just kind of somewhat out of the box thinking in 2021, 2022, if that's what the time frame, that was very much social media ad time and Google and SEO time. And those things are still a big deal, but man, there are segments of, we'll just say the US population that would still appreciate TV or.
Bro, without a doubt. I mean, the art of words, the communication, the power of communication has always been massive. And yeah, there's certain channels that at certain times like might pop more than others, but in reality, every channel is a possibility, everyone. And it depends on getting yourself in the framework of that customer in that moment. So my customer playing on Facebook is a different version of themselves than my customer watching the evening news.
Bam. Yep.
Right. And so I have to understand that. And so now I'm crafting a message for that version in that moment. If I'm going to play on Facebook, it might be something more lighthearted, entertaining. If I play, on the news, it might be more peace of mind, certainty. And I mean, the power of words can start wars. It's just profound how powerful they can be. And so crafting the message that really communicates a value, like a depth. It's not just like, hey, buy the garage door. Bop, 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 bop. What we're after is evoking a feeling that is going to stay with that person and communicate without really even talking about cooler. Like, that's where the art is. And I'm not very good at it. There's some massive players out there that are artists, and I've learned so much from Ryan Shute, Wizard of Ads. Just this last year, it's still bending my mind, but the repetition, the frequency, and the message are the key ingredients to really shaping norms and owning real estate in somebody's mind.
Man, that is profound. And thank you for articulating that. Those are things that I try and I attempt to articulate myself with some frequency. And that lends itself to, we hear it a lot. And I think one of Tommy's recent social media posts and or emails was about shiny object syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And stop going after the shiny object and the new thing. And you just mentioned, it's the consistency and the frequency and sort of the longevity of that message, and appealing on their platform, because it's right. A Google search customer or lead is different from a Facebook customer lead, is different from a billboard or a television. Their mindset's different.
Yeah, it is. Totally. Yeah, you say stop chasing the shiny penny. I mean, you're talking to a dude that, started quick. I started house painting, and then I brought in garage doors together, and they grew up fine. And then I went into other areas of painting. I got into interior. I got into fine custom homes, which I should never have been in. I got into kitchen cabinetry refinishing, and then I got into concrete flooring. I did airport hangers. I was doing epoxies, got into cabinetry for garage, all this stuff. They were all shiny pennies. Yeah. And it wasn't until, post COVID, I was like, okay, get rid of that. And now we're honed in on just garage doors. I flirt with a little bit of storage, but at the end of the day, I've learned how powerful focus is. And it's just so real. I get bored quick. So I have to be mindful of just my own self-awareness, be like, oh, am I creating change for change sakes, or is there a real reason? And I think a guy like Hormozy, some of his clips are like, I've scientifically labeled that anytime you put change, there's a 20% cost. And I don't think he's wrong. I just never put it in perspective. But you have to let, your marketing message run long enough. And you have to stay focused long enough in order to get anywhere.
Yeah, so true. Well, so now I want to go back to what I mentioned about 10 minutes ago when I said we're going to come back to this. And I'd like to spend, some time really fleshing this out. Mindset, a guy's mindset, an entrepreneur's mindset, or a garage door guy's mindset. And there's all kinds, right? I have a friend who took apart and reassembled his first garage door opener when he was 11, and now he just turned 30, and he's still in it, and he's big time, and to him it's church, right? It's lifestyle, the garage door industry and the garage door family. It's just what he does, and he is amazing at it. I also have friends that have zero experience in the garage door industry, but because they have some business sense or some money to start something, they've decided that this is a good thing for them and they want to jump in. And everybody's at a different place in this journey, but mindset can kind of level all the playing fields, if you will. You talked about focus here. What's the mindset got to be for a guy to maybe grow and scale his business as fast as you did? Because you talk about shiny object or shiny penny, but something worked to bring it all into focus.
I mean, it's a loaded question, and again, I still feel precarious. Like I can't wait to double and triple again.
Yeah.
And it'll probably for me still feel as precarious. And what's wild is, mindset every day. The entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster. I could be at cloud 9 at 9 a.m. and then get a gut punch by 10:30, and then roll back to somewhere even, and then just hit rock bottom before noon, and then pop. It's all over the place. And it's funny because I have. I think internally, one of my drives is that potentially I'll never feel like I'm truly enough. And there's some internal work to own that and say that. But there's some reality. Like, I think it's part of my baggage, maybe part of my journey, maybe part of the human journey of always just questioning. But that's also a big driver. Like, well, if I'm not enough now, how about like when I have an 8-figure company? Let's go. And yet, like, I care what people think of me, probably to a fault. And I know in the past it's definitely been to a fault. These days, I think it's way healthier. But if I get feedback from a customer, like, I have customers that find me and interrupt my lunch just to say thank you, that their experience with my tech was worth coming over and just mentioning and just being like, I see you, I recognize you, I don't really know you, but I just want to thank you because that was amazing. And then I'll get, an email or a snippet of somebody that had not a great experience. I'm like, oh, like, I'll carry that way more heavy than just the positivity stuff, right? So there's so much to this. Again, one is just getting really, really clear on where I want to go. And then I have learned over the years of how do I dissect that into who I need to be. And then that who can be crafted for day by day habits. Well, is the version of Matt that is going to wake up in his 50s, is he an early riser? Does he go to bed on time? Is he into substances? What's his habits with health? What's his habits with his wife? And I could start crafting that into, all right, what am I going to tell myself? What do I believe about myself? And what do I do? And those things have started to break old habits. And by no means is it over. Like, it's a journey, but I chunk them down so that in the mornings, I get up, I have a few moments to myself, and I just have a visualization that I read. Like, that's marketing to myself. I do that first.
Beautiful.
I rarely mess around with that. I'll get really good consistency to my physical, like, output, whether that's the gym or running or whatever. Like, my health is my main jam. I'm intentional about, my relationship with my kids, my wife, and reaching out to friends. And, so there's so much intentionality and kind of locking this down into a day by day rhythm that ultimately goes to focus, set, and then reset a mindset.
Man, that is awesome. That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have friends that I work with that when they were sort of in the beginnings of their garage door company, they were, well, maybe I'll do this. Let's see how it goes. I actually have a line on cold plunge tubs that I could start selling and some other things. And I don't want to ever take away from anyone accomplishing their dreams and going for their dreams. But at the same time, I am of the opinion there's never been a better time to be in the garage door industry.
I'd agree with that.
And it's and to get the focus and for guys that start this, they probably make promises to a spouse or a parent or to their kids. I am going to do this, and if you'll support me, I'll become X. And then they get frustrated because life happens. But I appreciate you sharing that. I like your perspective on focus, but not just that. It gets pretty granular when you start talking about what will I in my 50s, what will 50-year-old and how intentional am I in my life? In your case, your relationship with your family. Mm-hmm. And guys, let's be intentional. Let's be intentional about when we wake up and what we do right when we wake up in our morning, and find that affirmation, that vision board for the day where you said marketing to yourself. Because guys, anyone out there listening, Matt is a success story. He is. And I think everyone that's sort of in their first years of business should want to accomplish what Matt Kuehlhorn does. And I think it's way cool. How about if we talk a little bit, how about if you talk a little bit about you kind of taken mindset and some other thing. You've got this Cooler Lifestyle podcast, and I've listened to a bunch of them, and they're not all about garage doors. It's about your community.
Yeah.
And I think I'm like, man, how can everyone do something like that? Because that is undoubtedly draws attention to your garage door company, but man, you're blessing lives in other ways. There's there's healthy living, healthy lifestyle. Gosh, I can't even remember everything else I've listened to, but just talk about what that means to you and what that means to your garage door business, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. I mean, I've been exploring this idea of craft. I think I shared earlier, I did not grow up in the trades. Like my folks were always do-it-yourselfers. And so I saw like pretty significant remodels of either stores or houses or whatever, but I never even blinked across my radar. Like I'm a product of the 90s is when I graduated high school. And at that point, my mom was like, college bound, that's where you're going. And so I never even thought about the trades. I didn't pick up hammers in high school or college. I wish I would have. I dabbled here and there, but man, I tell you, this idea of craft and to be a craftsman is beyond just the trades. Like now I look at it because I didn't really apprentice correctly either. I just jumped in and figured stuff out, made some really good mistakes, and then had just a blessing of mentors. And I would always seek people out of who I wanted to learn from. But the crafting a life, every morning I'm like, I want to craft a life that is really worth dying for. Like, give me something so that I could get to the end, no matter if it happens tomorrow or 80 years from now. I do plan on living really, really old. But I want to be at the end and just wiped out and everything's like wrung out of me. And I just have nothing but gratitude left. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so this idea of craft, it's an exploration. Like, how do we get so much intention and attention while we're installing a door or repairing a door? I mean, that's craftsmanship. And you could take that level of intention and attention to life. How do I craft a relationship with my wife that's worth dying for? Nowadays, I'm so blessed in business to be developing leaders in my team. And that's just going to have bigger ripples. Like, it's not just Matt throwing down every day. I have real humans. I call them empathic beasts, and I love them. I will go to war with them. I will fight for them. And that gets more fun to me. Like, I'm all in on just like crafting a life. And that's what those conversations are, because I'll pull in everybody to chat with. Yeah. And if they're doing something cool, there's something there. Like, there's just some little edge, intention and attention. And how do we juice that just a little bit? Craft.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, from what I'm gathering, our business is not just an entity unto itself. It involves our passions and our hobbies and our interests and our families, and our business impacts all of those things. And so we need to kind of live in a healthy state on all of it so that our business will succeed and support our family and our relationships. Am I tracking right there?
Yeah, you're tracking right. And I would also add this, like, business is hard. There's nothing easy about it. And so part of our journey is just to understand what hard feels like and get okay with that level of hard and go to another level of hard. Like, once I solve one problem, I get a bigger problem, and I'm good with that. That tells me I'm moving somewhere. But there is so much to luck. And I would imagine that there's some listeners that would be like myself, running and you're gunning for however long. Maybe it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like myself. And I'm like, oh, I'm not as far along as I want to be. Or look at that guy who's been in the game for 2 years or 5 years and look where they're at. Or like, why is Tommy Mello so special? Like, how does he get a $250 million revenue company? Well, that dude just knows how to deal with a massive amount of pain. And into everything, to Cooler, to A1, to anything that you see. There's a little sprinkle of luck. And I'm going to call it luck. It could be divine intervention. It could be wherever you want to go and believe, but there are some things that are just simply out of control. Now, you can always pick up bags and move to another market because some markets are more hot than others. So there's a lot of things that are in your influence and under that, control, if you will. But there are so many things that are outside of it. And that's where, depending on real beliefs, like it's to something higher, like there's faith. And so that goes into a little bit of mindset too, of just having faith that things are going to work out. But man, I could go on and on all over the place.
Sure. I think that's what we all could. We all have a lot of our own perspective in what we love. And so thank you for sharing any bit of that. Very cool. Well, so what's going on? Do you have trade shows that you're speaking at coming up, or are you going to be visiting anywhere?
I don't have anything that I'm going to be speaking on. However, I am going back to Tommy's vertical track this year, so we'll see if he lets me up on stage. But I'm just more interested in learning, and my focus right now is understanding how to negotiate and finance acquisitions. Because these days I've got a model that I can put into some different companies, and there would be some value creation in that. And I'm really interested in taking my skill set to that next level, and really inspired by creating opportunities for those players on my team that are also interested in going that level. So that's really my focus. I'm going to go down, hang out with Tommy, Tom Howard, some of the other players that'll be at that conference, and just there to learn and see what we can do in 2026.
Cool. So 2026 is set to be an amazing year, a banner year.
It should be a good one. 2025 was definitely a banner year for Cooler. This is the first full year of just pure focus in our new market, and we are leading the market without a doubt, and just showing how the new school play can be done really well. 2026 is time for that next level.
Great. And I'll be at the vertical track as well. So I'll look for you. I'll come and find you. It's sure to be a great inspiration, great learning platform for anyone that attends.
I'm sure.
If you don't mind, and we can kind of bring this home in the next 4 or 5 minutes, but if you don't mind, just what kind of advice would you give? Just some nuts and bolts steps, action items that a guy that's like, I've done this for 2, 3, 4 years, or even 5 or 6, and he's never really been able to sort of achieve a dream level, how to get his business to the next level. And I mentioned a minute ago, I think there's never been a better time to be in the garage door industry. And I think it's so much better than a lot of trades. I really do. But what kind of counsel and wisdom would you give to somebody that's just like, hey man, I would sure like to take sort of a job that they've created for themselves, them and their truck, and become something next, bigger, next level. How would you encourage them?
On a kind of that mindset level, it's not quite as tactical, but it's really getting clear and making a decision, cut off everything else, and decide that you want to grow to X. Decide that you want to have an entity that you can literally exit and sell. Decide whatever that means to you. Like, what does that look like? And make a decision on that. And then for putting it together, I think this is going to apply to maybe 88% of the listeners and people in the garage door industry, is define your sales process. And that's a very tactical piece of like, how do you communicate from the time you pick up the phone to the time you go to their driveway, to the time you install and exit? What are the touch points, and how do you make that different than anybody else? Because that's where we start distinguishing ourselves as a premium piece and not the commodity. because otherwise it is about the door. But as soon as you see a bigger picture to it, it becomes this sales process, and you communicate in emotions and feelings, even though you're delivering a silly garage door. But that would just be like, if you have a humming entity, the sales process, man, is where you can arbitrage massively right now. And you can immediately have different pricing without giving up your base of little granny's, deal. Like, don't get me started there, but there's just so much opportunity in sales process that you could immediately boost your profits.
Right on. That is so cool. That is so awesome. If we'll start with that end in mind, or not the end, but our next goal in mind,
yes,
and reverse engineer back to where we're at, and look at what we need to do for that, so that we can hit that. And I really appreciate that perspective on that sales process. And I talk about that a lot. I do classes with regard to that. It starts with that phone call. Mm-hmm. This is where we set the stage for being different too, right? Yeah. If we're not cheap, we better be different. How else are we going to make it in any given market? And you can really start to set yourself apart by how you handle the phone call, and the first when you pull up Joe Crisera, who I consider him a great friend. On this podcast, I think about a year ago, he said, Rob, in 2024, all big ticket sales are done on a relationship. And now where do we take that? A relationship is like people do business with people they know, like, and trust. If you have people that know, like, and trust you, you have a relationship. Well, now we have a dedicated, undivided attention kind of audience, right? And we can work with them. Not just for this transaction, but for their next need, and they will remember us when they need to refer us out. Yeah. And that all starts, like with what you said, that starts with that phone call, and the branding too, and the message and how we deliver that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm gonna let Matt go. He's a busy man. He's got his business and his life and his family, and he wants to get to them. And I am so glad and so grateful that you would take some time and share. I've been inspired. I'm gonna be honest. There are lots of segments that you brought up here that I'm going to revisit, either in the way I communicate or just sort of implement in my life. So thank you again.
Yeah, Rob, I appreciate the opportunity, man. Really do.
You bet. Guys, I'll let everybody go. Thank you for joining us on episode 20 of the Garage Door Heroes podcast, where we're hoping to inspire and elevate everyone in our industry. We want you to thrive and win in any market and any economy, and you can. And we just kind of break this apart into nuts and bolts with each episode. And again, Matt, have a great one. I'll look forward to seeing you next month. And everybody, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to the Garage Door Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Robb Leishman. If you got value today, hit subscribe and share this with another Garage Door hero you know. This show is brought to you by the Legit 5 Garage Door marketing team, helping garage door companies grow and dominate their markets. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and keep winning.